Так, ну давайте продолжать.
So let's resume then. Or actually, let's conclude, because we would like to finalize our business program of RIGF with a topic we started the whole thing with: AI and its application in cybersecurity for various applications. Now let me introduce to you Andrei Ivanov from Microsoft, and Anton Fishman from Group IB, and Dmitry Zaitsev, MSU. So basically, here we've got Russian and foreign companies and an academic. Now let's try to look at the problem from various angles within the time frame allotted, 1.5 hours. We prepared the questions, we exchanged letters with our colleagues in here. And there seems to be a question that I haven't included into the list, and it requires to be discussed. However, I don't think it's it's a good idea to discuss terminology. You know, the security experts usually say, if you want to bust an event, ask a question: how security is different from cybersecurity or information security. Usually, people spend hours discussing that, and in the end of the day, nobody is satisfied. Well, but since the topic is known, and we have panelists in here who represent various areas of our life, and they want to share it with us, let me ask you this question: what's AI in relation to cybersecurity? Is it a set of mathematical algorithms that is limited to neural networks or machine learning, or is it a fully autonomous system that works God knows how, but still produces the result everybody's okay with? So what's AI for you? Dmitry, let's start from you, because you're an academic. You start. Thank you very much. And thanks the organizers for the opportunity to speak. It's a pleasure to be at this forum. I don't know whether it's a good choice to start from me, to pick me, because I'm not a practitioner. I mean, I'm not practicing cybersecurity. I'm not an applied scientist. I'm more of a theoretical scientist. I deal with theoretical problems and on specific issues of a machine or an AI. But what's AI for me? I would probably here follow a very well-known formula and quote it here. Because from one side, AI can be looked at as a copy, a model of a human intellect, human intelligence. On the other hand, AI is a cognitive agent that acts upon certain rational principles, but these principles can be different from what we assume as normal. There's other way of explaining it. AI can be treated by us as something comparable to man, as a separate entity. And we can also talk about AI as a model of certain rational procedures. Well, the play on chess. These are the different approaches to artificial intelligence. Personally, for me, well, just because I'm so professionally oriented, I meet the first type of artificial intelligence more often. So we talk about AI when we discuss rational cognitive multi-agency, and it means that what you say, we're trying to replace the man where the man is inefficient, where he is or she is slow and not very good in decision-making. So we're not trying to produce a new quality, a new function. We just want to increase the speed of what a man does slower. Well, not necessarily, because, this blue dream is to create a superintelligence, an intelligence that is either comparable or superior to human intelligence. However, we don't yet know whether these objectives are reasonable. Are we expecting Skynet to arrive soon? Well, me not. But yes, that's the way you can treat it, you can take it. Thank you, Andrei. Once again, thanks a lot to the organizers for inviting me. Can I please draw the audience attention and my esteemed colleagues in here to the following? Since we have security as the general topic, maybe it's the second type of artificial intelligence we would like to spend most of our time on. Basically, we're talking about agents, assistants, aids to a man. But it's not a full-fledged artificial intelligence. If I understand taxonomy right of artificial intelligence, I'm pretty sure there are lots and lots of taxonomies around, but at least what I've seen in various websites, there's some like limited AIs, we use them, general AIs closer to human intelligence, and superintelligence. Luckily, as far as I understand, it's still too far away from us. So, many capabilities of the AI we have today, they stem from this limited type of AI. And, well, the basic stuff it does is machine learning. Yes. Anton? Thank you, Andrei. I would like again to thank the organizers. It's truly a remarkable event, and we had lots of interesting conversations and presentations. I will agree with Andrei. Let's consider AI as the set of technologies, machine learning and other data extraction techniques, Uyeba technologies, and etc., etc. Because AI per se, I mean these techs, in various industries are at a different level of development. In cybersecurity, AI is less developed than in other industries, probably. Why is it so? Because if you take weather broadcasting, no laws of physics are violated here. And it is pretty simple and easy to try to forecast, based on big data analysis and everything else, what kind of weather we're going to have soon. When we talk about using AI in cybersecurity, here a criminal, a perpetrator, doesn't play and abide by the rules. A criminal will try to conscientiously mislead the system. That's the first problem of the paradigm. And the second problem, I don't think a full AI will come soon, because there is always the social part of the issue. Because who should be made responsible for decision-making process if the decision is made by an artificial intelligence? Well, same applies for car manufacturers. If we're talking about cars with autopilots, fourth and fifth category, then if the system makes a decision, who is to blame? Who is held responsible for what the cars have decided? But you haven't answered my question. The question that you wanted to raise, what's an AI? Does it mean that we're talking only about marketing term? And each one of us, an academic or a vendor, sees something different. And the consumers have their own notion of what AI is. And that's why there is a gap between reality and expectations. And consumers don't actually get what they wanted. When they hear the words artificial intelligence, they don't get what they want in terms of our expectations. Andrei. I think the problem of expectations is always there. Anytime a new technology comes along, the first thing that follows in its footstep is a marketing activity, is a marketing wave. And always the marketing message would reflect the actual situation. So I don't really want to call the current cybersecurity solutions as full-fledged AI. It is a sub-department of an AI, especially the methods that perpetrators are using and criminals are using, but it's not a full-fledged artificial intelligence, it's just a set of certain tools that might comprise in the future a full AI. Yeah, there is a big hype around it, for sure, because it does smell marketing. What's important is to communicate this idea to decision makers. CEOs, CIOs don't really know why they need it. Cybersecurity based on AI. The main reason for it is to provide services of good quality and to help business to meet its objectives. Whether AI technologies are used for it or machine learning, etc., are used or not, that doesn't really matter. And the decision makers don't really care about it. And vendors specifically followed this path that created the hype around it, but they never communicate the actual end value for the consumer, for the user. Then comes the question. When should we start thinking about what's called artificial intelligence? When should we start looking at least into machine learning, deep learning, neural networks? Why can't we just enter static rules for our monitoring solutions, firewalls, NDS, and antivirus programs that already today are capable enough to do the job? Why should we spend millions for something that nobody can explain what it does? I think 5 or 6 years ago, we moved on to a new epoch when each company, each customer and client, each vendor faces the issue of big data. The amount of technologies that criminals are using is growing. Older solutions are incapable of both analyzing these things, and you know the new term sophisticated attacks, target attacks. So these terms mean not those simple attacks we used to have in the 90s, but complex, multi-vector attacks. And one can only handle them when you apply big data analysis, and ML technologies, YEBA, and etc. Will have to come along. The fact that these things have been called artificial intelligence, maybe because the terms UYEBA and ML doesn't really sound good, but you can call it any way you like. When you said big data, and when you used this term, we once again go back to our terminology discussion. But again, in the majority of our organizations, if we exclude Central Bank or Rostelecom or Microsoft or Cisco or Google, well, these excluded. Others don't really deal with big data. What they deal with is a certain amount of databases, relational usually, with numbers in tables and columns, which usually can easily be subjected to simple analytics available in any SQL database. Maybe a couple of thousand entries, hundreds of thousand entries, that's it, but it's not the big data. Is machine learning actually needed here for this structured rows of data? I don't think it's necessary. If we now do the polling here with the users, usually the way users analyze the data is taking them from logs, from various systems. They don't really have big unstructured raw data. Claiming that everybody now has to deal with big data and that's why ML, UYEBA, and whatever is the silver bullet, well, it's not really relevant. Anton, when we talk about table-based data, it all depends on the industry and why are you doing this for? I mean, analyzing this data. For little, small and medium enterprises, businesses, yes, possibly you're right. But cybersecurity implies antivirus or endpoint agents, network devices, various vectors of attack distribution, and various vectors by which malware code gets into the computer. And the methods the attackers are using are constantly changing. So we cannot just rely on, well, CM systems and CM data analytics. And we cannot rely on the network sensor data only. Even if we have a small company, and even if we collect everything together, the network sensor logs, endpoint agent logs, domain controller logs, and etc., 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 correlation of this data to search for anomalies will bring us to the big data. Well, I didn't buy it. Andre, yes, in continuation to what Anton has said, yes, in some smaller companies, it's hard to call the data they have to deal with big data. But I do agree that if you have lots of sources of data, then yes, probably we're approaching big data. And that's why many vendors are currently offering cloud-based solutions. And cloud solutions usually carry on themselves big data coming not only from one customer, but actually a whole region or a whole country. And that's where machine learning is definitely needed. Because the bigger the statistics, the larger it is, the easier it is to teach an algorithm and to detect anomalies. So drawing certain conclusion to what I said, yes, maybe when we are when we stay within just one company, of course, we don't deal with the big data. But big data happens only when there's a cloud platform. So a vendor who's collected lots of fuzzy and lots of fishy data, doesn't know where to put it, calls it big, and sells it to you, right? Yeah, it does look like that. It smells fishy, but until we discuss a certain scenario, well, if you want me to discuss a particular case, I can do it. If you want to analyze what's happening on OS, Microsoft, say, here the vendor will clearly understand what happens using the data they have. Collecting the data from all the computers in the world, well, not all, but the majority. For a vendor, using those machine learning algorithms, it's easier to detect cases where something goes wrong. And it's much easier when you're just doing it within one single company. And same applies to all other scenarios and all other areas. Well, let's take authentication or identification. If you want to authenticate like just one person out of 50, machine learning will not help you in anything. But if you have lots and lots of people to authenticate from, you can identify certain patterns, attack patterns, that would be hard to foresee with deterministic things. Dmitry, being an academic, what's your take on it? Yeah, I'm more of a university guy rather than an academic. You know, one of the problems that scientists today face is where to get the money to finance potential research. Not only scientists, I need to say. Well, one thing is when you do something applied, which can become a low-hanging fruit, and you can sell today or tomorrow. The other thing is when you're developing a thing that will only jump in 10 years. That's what happened with artificial intelligence term. This early optimism died very soon after we realized that we cannot build the actual artificial intellect, but just as a tribute to it, we still call all the things artificial intelligence. Well, same happened with scientific research. It's the same scientific marketing. There are certain problems we have to deal with now, but for them to be effectively solved, we have to bring more people, more money, and more scientists. Meaning you have to do it the customers have to pay it, right? They have to pay you money, and this money will not necessarily produce an effect. Well, I wouldn't be that rigid. I wouldn't be that strict. Who else will give you money? The state. Why not the government? This primary discussion automatically answers my first question that I wanted to ask. Why consumers are not using artificial intelligence technologies so actively in cybersecurity? Although everybody's scared by those sophisticated and persistent attacks who nobody's seen, but everybody says they're somewhere there. And I understand that the consumer doesn't buy into it. It might be that they're so clandestine, so secret that the consumers don't actually see, and then they have outdated technologies, but the new technologies they can't even buy because they're too expensive. And there are only a few companies who have the need for AI. And the problem here is not because there is no need, but because nobody is there to explain why we need it. And I think that's the biggest problem of the industry, and not even the industry, I mean all of the industries where AI is used. However, with other industries it might be easier. Take healthcare professionals. And there's a case when millions of x-rays that were analyzed and doctors can come up with the statistics. Well, in our case, we don't have that many success cases. We, IT industry and cybersecurity, are not the pioneers in AI application. We cannot actually show for the benefits of it, although we do understand that this technology is useful. Well, I do agree with what you say, but if we remember your presentation during the last session and the statistics, how many customers, you say, install their patches on time? And it's a trivial thing. You want our customers to implement a complex technology, which nobody's clear about? I mean, whether it's sufficient or not, and whether it will pay back the costs? You know why criminals are brought in this discussion so often? Because they have fewer limitations today. They now become entrepreneurs, criminal entrepreneurs. They tried, tested, it worked, they mass produce it. The organizations not always have entrepreneurial spirit, or that bold entrepreneurial spirit, because when we want to roll out a serious technology for the whole organization, everybody looking at ROI and so on and so forth, return on investment, etc. Classical protection measures, yeah, the industry knows how to sell it. Machine learning, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, there's not been so many cases around, and trustworthy information, what a particular upside will it give? Well, that's why AI is not on the rise yet in cybersecurity. However, there are a couple of scenarios how one can use these cool stuff. And the more and more customers are taking them on, the more vendors will continue to push it. My next question is about complete automation of protection, the cyber protection, cybersecurity that is fully automated. Do you think it's possible today? Well, let's go away from the AI definition. Let's believe that we've agreed what it is. Imagine we have the big data, we know how to analyze that. So the question is, do you think we will be capable of presenting to a customer a system that will be fully autonomous and automated? It detects itself, it makes a decision itself, it defends itself. That's what we see in fantastic movies and sci-fi books. Yes. I would say no. And I will explain why. Yeah, let's have a look at which level we are at now. Today, AI tech comes in two formats and shapes. First, when AI is embedded to your current system as an analytical system and decision-making system, or as an independent system that provides data for some other subsystems. A fully automated system will require to be aware of all possible attack patterns and will have to preempt any criminal action. But you know about social engineering? Remember, it's been in the dog days. And a man is always is always too creative and will always try to overcome technological boundaries, and it's going to always be an armament race. Yes, we have generative competitive networks when two subsystems are being built and they try to cheat each other. And based on the interaction between these two systems, other patterns, behavioral patterns, then are identified that you can build and embed in your protection. But the same technologies will always be available with the criminals. So we can't create a fully automated system. A human has to take part in it. Thank you, Andrei. And I do agree with Anton. I also believe that no. And it's even hard to imagine. An IC system that works without a man completely and is still a comprehensive one. There are always control points in the system. And since there are control points with the human interaction, it's hard to deal with it, again, in a fully automated way. Certain autonomous systems appear, but just as a part of the system. Let me give you an example. Imagine a scenario where we can just create a signature using a sandbox and machine learning. We could find out malicious activity of a malware file, or another scenario where we can generate, according to which we can generate some actions, some rules to protect from an attack, like firewall rules, or deleting certain processes from the OS. So these things, of course, now appear with the help of the machine learning and AI. Previously we didn't have that, but I don't think we're soon to arrive to a full AI. Dmitry, you see it in a broader light. Any particular projects you carry on now in the university, something that is not in production yet? Yes, probably I must have a wider perspective, but here I fully agree with my colleagues, and I also believe it's impossible. If you ask me why, my explanation will be less practical, more philosophical. Sorry for that. However hard we tried, well, at least at this stage, and in the nearest future to come, we will never be able to create an artificial environment for an artificial intelligence. An environment that is fully matching ours, because a man gets the knowledge from the surroundings, from the environment. Being embedded in the surroundings, we get certain benefits. So the system, even though it can be bombarded with stimuli, it will never be able to replicate the man, because it doesn't have so many sources of information as a man does. So it means that people will always be needed. Humans. But if we look at the cybersecurity domain, the attacks here sometimes occur because men violate or they don't follow the rules. For example, not patching the vulnerability. 99% of vulnerabilities are usually already known when they're used by criminals. And usually such objectives easily can be automated. Well, same with phishing. Criminals use hundreds and thousands of various means to force users to do something, but usually the way they do it is through opening a file or linking on the link. No other ways have yet been devised, or you have an objection to make. Okay, but the list is going to be Well, text-to-speech with a request to name a password on the telephone. How can you automate that? This protection. Well, you can synthesize speech. Artificial intelligence can analyze the speech and can synthesize it, identifying who calls and from which telephone number, and then it says, give me the password. You don't even have to have an artificial intelligence, just set some static rules. If or. Yeah, but then it has to be recognized on a global level. Well, I think it's enough if you do it locally. Locally, when a person gets a call like this on his mobile phone, not the corporate phone, from a director, from a main administrator, whatever, give me the password. The rules of digital hygiene today are so well embedded, but people so good at ignoring them that for criminals, quite often, it's not even needed to devise perverted means of fishing out the password. Yeah, and automating the process helps to solve the problem. If you look at stats, only 4 measures can close 90% of incidents. Patches. Limitations to the amount of applications and the type of applications you can upload. And access management, or even 3. So 95% of all the incidents go away like this, without expensive firewalls, DNSs, and whatever. Of course, everybody wants to spend the budget, right? Because if you don't spend the budget, you won't be given the budget next year. Yeah, that's why they spend it on DNS service and so on and so forth. But there are some very simple things that you can automate. And if we can automate something that a man doesn't do, we will close down, we will solve 99% of all the problems. And the channels that criminals use. And then you say, we still will be needing people. No, we'll still be needing people, but now we will close 99% of all the incidents because we have an immaturity yet in the market. But when we close those problems, others will appear, and the probabilities will distribute in a different way. Yeah, that happens already now because, luckily, customers listen to vendors. Maybe they're not doing it the way we want them to do, but certain positive shifts are taking place. But criminals are also not sitting idle. File S attacks without any traces to disks, multi-component attacks with lots of payloads. Even if you have your patches installed, there are always new vectors through which the hackers can come through, the attackers can come through. Well, in the cases you described, a person is incapable of doing anything. A human cannot detect payload. If you download a legal toolbox, say, or a tool into your system, well, of course. I'm not saying that the person has to do it manually. I'm just saying that the person always will be there to make a decision whether a certain protection measure has to be used. Because I will repeat again, there's no panacea. There's no silver bullet, and it will not come along shortly. I mean, it might not even be there in a long time frame. Then I have a question too. Very down-to-earth questions. What specific AI technologies you are either developing or using or researching, so that we were clear what you do? And you call that AI, or you call it machine learning. We just want to know that you don't have a static antivirus or a firewall that kills traffic for certain ports and protocols. Anton, let's start from you. Yeah, we use lots of technologies in different products. If we take cyber intelligence product, we use lots of machine learning capabilities. How do you use it? When you say we're losing it a lot, well, it doesn't mean anything. What do you do? Well, I can't really call you can't really tell you everything, but cyber intelligence requires working and dealing with big data coming from various sources, searching for correlations, matching, searching for behavioral patterns, building links between entities, for running investigations. If we take an anti-fraud product bank secure portal, then there we have even more stuff, because it analyzes a keyboard handwriting to find out whether it is this particular person who did the transaction and not somebody else, for an automatic search of dependencies, an automatic pattern identification. So yeah, that comes at the threshold of machine learning and neural networks. Take another product, our sandbox. There, ML is used. Well, after all the data is collected, we correlate it with, well, we try to find out whether the file we have is a malicious file. And we attribute it to a particular group of files. And for that, machine learning has to build various patterns of how legitimate and non-legitimate files in the system behave. These technologies are available today already. And then we're moving forward towards the ADR agents. Our colleagues here have similar technologies. ADR agents provide for lots of components that send data into a local cloud or local solution and analyzes the data to help you to identify threats. Microsoft uses machine learning almost everywhere. Antivirus programs, Sandbox, we talked about, endpoint detection and response tools. All vendors use them, and Microsoft is not an exception from the rule. There is a service that I have already given to you as an example. When you want to analyze the authentication fact, how can you do it? By means of machine learning based on location. If you know the location of the user or the group of the users, you can really make some conclusions out of it. Plus, add geolocation of a mobile device, an IP address, and here you've got lots of data to analyze. And we already use it in various services, in Microsoft as well, both inside and outside. We offer those services to our customers. Another interesting example that came to my mind, our cloud environment, Azure, we can do lots of things, interesting things. We have lots of places there where artificial intelligence can be of use. We have a good article issued recently, how our colleagues used machine learning to detect compromised Azure machines by analyzing traffic from DNS. There's a whole article available for it. I'm just saying that by using these opportunities of these capabilities of machine learning, analyzing DNS queries, since they all go to the cloud, we can detect the machines that for particular reasons were compromised. Dmitry, yes. As I said, I'm more a practical guy, but in a different field. That's why I've got different problems. And the first one I should talk about is modeling natural human deductions or human thinking patterns. And you've shown a very good, interesting example in your presentations with pandas and gibbons, with road signs. You said one phrase that a car can recognize a sign wrongly, and the man recognizes it rightly because it does it differently. So it's a very interesting question. How does a man recognize a sign, and how are causality is built, how our logic is built, how do we reason, and how are we different from the models we suggest. So a very simple example, I don't know, a very typical thing. You know, there's a riddle. 3 logics in a bar. 3 logic come to a bar, and the waiter addresses them and says, "Are you gonna order beer?" The first one says, "I don't know." The second one says, "I don't know." The third one says, "Yes, we're all gonna order the beer." How does the guy manage to know that everybody's gonna have beer? Not because he listens, but because he uses reflections and reasons of other agents and then arrives to this conclusion. And second thing, not necessarily these reasoning or these models of reasoning can have to correlate and have to replicate human, because there are other non-human but more efficient ways of solving problems. Modeling, well, I really don't like the word modeling or simulation, but formalization of reasoning, yeah, we can also do. So when we model the traffic process, the wheel, right, seems to be a very perfect form for it. It doesn't really look like people's legs. That's why I also think that reasoning must not necessarily be close to a human one. Do you have any research which is much more like applied, security or safety or any other neighboring topics? You know, we say this is for others to deal with. We are still at the pre-investigation phase. My objective is to build algorithms out of it. This is like the kind of procedures I built. How they put those algorithms into practice, I don't know. We are trying to diversify our activities. I have yet another question. It goes to all 3 of you, but I'm pretty sure your answers will be different. Because each company has to do research and intelligence on others. What do others do in the same area? In Russia, we don't have so many cybersecurity players because of the recent decrees issued by this head of the state. And, but at the same time, it seems like we have a very good environment for money making, because import substitution has been introduced, and so on and so forth. But almost none of the Russian vendors does AI, in whatever form you like. Everybody's just goes with the flow. We have stack norms and regulations, FSB norms and regulations. They say, let's do the encryption service, which will not survive a significant load. Or Stack has the signature pool. And of course, nobody even thinks about making our own analytics for those signatures. What do you think, where the problem lies? Anton, you can talk about the Russian market. Andrei can talk about an external company that observes what happens in the Russian market. Here, I think there are 2 factors, main factors. First, everything ends with money and starts with money. And second, it all, well, and starts with money, ends with habit. I'll start with the habit. Imagine the majority of our companies, cybersecurity companies, are coming from a military sector, a defense industry. And they have their own class or range of products, like network devices, and they know they are demanded. They have people and they have technology, how to do it. And they just keep with the flow, go with the flow. Now talking about money. All new technology requires lots of investments into HR, into resources. And it also requires you to teach the market, to educate the market. Yes, we do have requirements from Stack and FSB. They define those norms how products should be developed. Well, but they never explain how sandboxes should be developed, though. And if the company is in this market for a long time, and they don't really want to move so fast. Only those looking into the future. Well, the majority of companies sitting here know that they have their own state customers or governmental, ministerial clients. And there will always be demand for the products they produce. So why should they move a finger to develop something new? That's the reason. Thank you, Andrei. Just recently, remember we discussed how hard it is to sell of it and to explain what's it in for our clients. Yeah, the majority of those vendors, they just rest on their laurels. And they have an existing platform and they live on it. Sometimes they do attach certain bits and pieces of machine learning to it, but that's where it ends. So I agree, it doesn't make sense to invest money into something that is yet unclear, and you never know whether it will pay back or not. Now, those companies who want to tap the international markets, or at least who want to go abroad and overseas, they're trying to be more active in this regard. And we have good examples. Anton and other companies in the market use such technologies within their own products, or they create services or other products that use machine learning. Yes, it might be that the majority of actors in the market stays where they are. Will the situation change? I think as soon as there is a demand, the supply will come suit. Thank you, Dmitry, university guy. Unfortunately, I cannot support my colleagues in here because probably we have different businesses. We have a completely reverse situation we've been dealing with, and we're still dealing with, and I hope we will be dealing with. Yeah, scientifically. Because the main outcome for us is our publications, dissemination of knowledge. And since we've never faced practical issues like our colleagues here, we're not involved in the practical issues like our colleagues. In this sense, we are feeling a little bit better than our colleagues in here. If we can convince others that this is a potential area, this is a potential track, and we're following the world in its footsteps, well, more people are inclined to order such research from us. Do a lot of people do AI here in Russia? I mean, universities? Yes, a lot. It depends on the region, actually, because sometimes you might have a university. It has nothing to do with artificial intelligence, but it might happen that there's a nice guy, a clever one, with a group of students, and they will just do it. And then based on your experience, although you have others doing it for you, but it might be that you've heard. Do internet companies come to you for research? Do they buy it from you? Yuri Gurevich, is it Microsoft? Maybe he was. Yes, he was. Because, yeah, Yuri Gurevich, a mathematician and a logician, and I once was present at his presentation. He was introduced as a Microsoft guy. Probably he is still in Microsoft. He's not here, he's there. Okay, there. He works with Microsoft. The majority of my colleagues decided to discontinue doing AI and take over the computer science instead, data science instead. But I mean, does Russian business have demand for research? Do you think the business is interested in doing something new and take your research and produce something practical out of it? Well, I've not been doing market analytics. Well, I haven't seen any companies approaching me with this. Well, it looks very sad. It sounds so, at least. Especially knowing where our country is going with its import substitution policy. It means that the whole world is moving in one direction and Russia is moving in the other. Well, if not the opposite direction, but at least it stands on where it is and uses the tech they had 20, 50 years ago. Well, time will show. There's a forecast that AI will soon lead the to 5 million jobs being lost. The artificial intelligence will replace people in certain jobs, and they will be all cast adrift. Aren't you afraid that by developing AI within your own companies and corporations, I'm not saying that AI will replace you fully, you don't believe in it. Yeah, that I heard. But do you believe that the majority of your employees will have to leave your company because they will be replaced by robots? Oh, in brackets. Programs, software that will do it better than people, and they will not be begging for salary, cookies, and massage desks. Yeah, we passed all the technological revolution cycles, and yes, people did lose their jobs. But then people had to reset, learn new qualifications, new jobs will appear, new positions. Let me speak frankly, I hope that artificial intelligence, that technology will help us to remove those intellectually undemanding jobs or roles, and will give more opportunities, will give more manpower for intellectual jobs. That's what I'm hoping for. Interesting. Andrei, I would like to say that these scary stories were around for a long time. Remember when cloud technologies appeared recently? Somebody said that IT departments will soon be cut off. But I work with customers a lot, and I haven't seen a significant reduction in their IT departments. It happened somewhere, but not because of the clouds. Just opposite happened. New jobs appeared. Something came along in place of what was left. It's not that one shouldn't be cautious. One shouldn't be well, we shouldn't be wary about that, but you just need to understand what's it in for you and have your backup plan ready. It's not a threat, it's an opportunity for all of us to start doing something more interesting. That's a very good approach. Colleagues, I have a question to you, the audience. Now, still sober, for 2 seconds, can you please think how sure you are that you will not be replaced by artificial intelligence in the next 5 to 7 years to come? Who is sure that he will not be replaced or she will not be replaced? Hands up, please. The majority is very sure. Yeah, it's good to talk to optimists. Everybody believes they're unique and irreplaceable, which is good to know. Does anyone want to comment that? Yes. Yes, the microphone will be brought in. There. He is the biggest critic of Roskomnadzor, the second biggest. Well, finally, I am not criticizing Roskomnadzor, but probably Roskomnadzor will be replaced. Yes, they will, for sure. Not even by artificial intelligence, but just 2 lines made in Python will be enough to replace the whole Russian regulator. Why AI cannot replace us? Goal setting. Everything we do, all our life, well, raising kids. I don't think artificial intelligence will ever be able to do that job. Let it try at least. Everything we do is we are here to serve the artificial intelligence. So, thinking that natural intelligence will be replaced with artificial intelligence in 5 to 7 years, I don't think so. Yes, Skynet. You still have Skynet on your slide there. Well, this situation is possible. It might be that Skynet will go out of control, launch nuclear weapons and so on, but it's not a replacement to natural intelligence. It's just the loss of control. Setting goals, identifying the strategy, knowing where to move. I don't think the artificial intelligence will ever replace us in this capacity. Maybe we shouldn't be moving anywhere. Maybe we should just sit down and relax, have our beer. If we sit down and relax and drink beer, then those people who you think behave like that shouldn't answer such questions, because it's not the audience you're talking to. It's not the kind of audience you should be talking to. One might suggest that maybe, yeah, in Cisco, artificial intelligence will be able to generate 130-page presentations. Actually, 2 lines in Python. But what will be the content in those presentations? It's Sergei Lukatsky who will be still defining it. I'm not an optimist about Cisco, but again, it's a separate topic. There was a question here still. Andrei Sherbovich, HSE. It's a comment rather than a question. What I haven't heard a single time in here is anything related to ethics of artificial intelligence. We haven't yet gone through all the questions, legal aspects of artificial intelligence. And it causes lots of doubt and concern. Because if one follows the general rule, usually regulation falls back. The development here, the fallback is catastrophic. So it might be that we will come to a situation where human rights will be violated by the artificial intelligence. I don't think it's going to be news that somebody's rights, people's rights are violated. Yeah, we should do something with it. Well, at least we need to try to start approaching these problems, not only the technical ones. However, I do believe that collaboration between the technical experts who can tell how it should be structured, and lawyers and legal experts, it would be of great use. Thank you, thank you. I had this question on my list. You, as people who deal with the development of AI solutions or representative of AI companies, what's your take on the legal consequences of, well, your systems making decisions bypassing a human decision-making? Imagine there's a fraud and it has to be blocked, but it is at this point in time a person had to transfer money for his relative, and this transaction is an unstandard one. It happens once in a lifetime. The system treats it as fraudulent and blocks it. Who is to be made responsible for it, for this decision-making? Are you dealing with this, or it's for the consumer? Let them suffer. Andrei. I know that Microsoft pays a lot of attention to it. Yeah, the thought is as follows. Well, it's hard to imagine when a blocked entry or a blocked transaction will lead to a threat to life, a life-threatening situation. Maybe such situations exist, but it's hard for me to imagine them. Well, if it happens this way, it will cause consequences, but usually it doesn't. But of course, the question is important and it has to be dealt with. I remember what we had. Software programs that can make a decision and can do something by themselves. It's a setting option, like a detection response. So closing a port at a firewall or responding to a process, depending on your settings, you can. Well, it might not even do it by itself. First, what it can do is get connected to a person who makes a decision. And only afterwards, depending on the setting itself, it can do something else. So again, those settings are managed by humans, and each company decides for itself what's more convenient for them. But that's a specific example in relation to a specific technology. Yes, there are some scenarios where machine learning or AI tools may harm. But in cybersecurity, I don't really see any scenarios where such harm will be grave or seriously damaging. Yeah, but we can fantasize. For example, when such technologies are used for critical infrastructure, emergency protection, shutdown, and so on. But you still hadn't answered. Who's responsible? The developer? The user, or, like it was said in the beginning, maybe we should create a separate entity, a separate subject of law, an AI itself, impersonated, that bears responsibility, but when its ashes are dispersed above the gang river, its blame disappears, or whatever. As far as this subject of law, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't really answer that. As far as responsibility is concerned, partially it shall sit with the developer. And it's always been like that, even without the AI. You know, when a car manufacturer... Yeah, let's not talk about cars, because software licenses always stayed as is. Yeah, I agree, it's more complicated. But as far as I know, and I'm not a lawyer again, there are precedents when it was possible to get compensation from the AI producer. Of course, it's the final user who manages the system in the end, but certain responsibility rests with the developer. If we talk about autopiloted cars, I'm pretty sure there will still be control points, certain control points. Self-driven cars. Right now, the driver is still behind the wheel, so the driver serves as an assistant to the car, and then some part of responsibility rests with the driver. If we talk about more serious systems, I'm pretty sure it will be the same in the future. So there will be certain control points which will be checked by an operator, a person, and some part of the responsibility will stay with this person. Anton. Thank you. Like we said in the very beginning, artificial intelligence in cybersecurity is still making its baby steps, as opposed to lots of other industries coming back to those cars, autonomous driverless vehicles. Who has to be saved, a driver or a granny running across a road where there's no crossing? Who is to blame, a manufacturer or a person who bought the vehicle? And there is no legal background yet for such issues. Cybersecurity is far behind even the driverless car. So our customer knows himself or herself when buying our system how critical are the activities that our system will facilitate or block or whatever, how critical are for their operations, like transactions or keys, and the customer may choose whether to trust the system completely or to use its results, its outcomes, for their own decision-making process. I agree that The developer has to be held responsible for it, but there should be some other rules of the game which we do not yet have. Dmitry, your point of view. Again, I'm not going to talk about law because I'm not an expert, and I fully agree with colleagues here, but I'd just like to add two things. First, I don't think there's anything new. Truly, when a novelty comes along, it enriches the types of communication and relations between people, and it requires new ethical regulation or legal regulation. And same here, when new situations will come along, when those new cases will happen, it will entail the development of these new legal practices or ethical practices. So here I believe it's the user and the manufacturer or the developer have to be held responsible depending on the case. So it has to be regulated on a case-by-case basis by, again, law, when we'll have the object of law, right? Not just the subjects. Probably it's not us. Probably we'll have to be copying somebody else's experience, like it always happens. It seems like you are saying that it's the customer, the consumer, who has to make a decision, but the responsibility is to be shared. But again, consumer comes first. He makes the decision to operate a system that's thinks within itself. And the fact that the system was programmed by a developer, we tend to forget it. We use the as-is principle without any claims. If the same principle works for normal software, what else should we expect from artificial intelligence? I don't think it's relevant. I believe that when more complex mechanisms arrive, like cars and whatever, where AI will will have more points of contact with humans and will have more potential harming impacts, then of course the responsibility will have to be shared more thoroughly. Today, when we just deal with software, such responsibility sharing is inevident or non-existent. Obviously, one will have to deal with this in the nearest future. And yes, in this country, little attention is paid to it. Just recently, I faced a situation when I was registering a number of domains for one of the Russian registry. And this registry, like an act of goodwill, we hadn't had it in our contract, attached his domains to my name server, and he was also servicing an number of malware domains. And access to my domains was blocked in my own network because the artificial intelligence system believes that I shouldn't go to those domains because they sit within the potentially harmful segment. And either myself or the company can be damaged because of it. So this is a case which I don't know how to take from any point of view, legal or economic. Who is to blame? The company that cares for my safety but doesn't allow me to use my domains, or the registry that is not really following closely the safety of those it works with? So it's a very pragmatic issue. It doesn't have any harm to neither life nor health, but it's an unpleasant one still, and it causes us to think how this topic is going to be regulated in the future. Because if we go to our security service, the ticket is open for 2 weeks still because they don't know what to do with it. If we remove the blocking, it's not right because I can be harmed by a server with the registry. If you go to the registry, the registry will say that I'm not responsible for those domains because these are not his domains. So it's a complex topic, and I'm sure we will continue to break our lances about it. And but additional impetus will be soon given by autopilots in Tesla and Uber. because these autopilots led to casualties. In one case, a death was inflicted upon a pedestrian, and in another case, it was a passenger who also died. And now all the lawyers will be onto the task, although in Russia we don't have a case law, but this particular experience, I'm pretty sure, will be used by us later. So in the end, I just want to ask the last question, again about ethics, that I mentioned during the keynote. This letter of Google engineers who were asking Google management to stop working on the Ministry of Defense project. Imagine a hypothetical situation. A certain secret agency comes to you, I don't really want to mention the country, and says, let's now sign an agreement with you, and you're going to transfer me the data that you collect with your big data systems, with your AIs and whatnot. Either I'm going to pay money to you for it, or you have to do it voluntarily, like it always happens in this country. What shall you do? Again, irrespective of the company, just detaching yourself from a company, like in your personal capacity, as people who talked about artificial intelligence for an hour and a half. What would you do, Anton? Detaching from my company, yes, detaching as a person, because ethics deals with men. I think an equality principle has to be put into action in here. If the same service is rendered by me to commercial organizations, I would probably do the same for the special service, the Secret Service. If not, I don't see the difference. So if there are some common rules of the games, like we talked about general collaboration rules between certs, yeah, let me rephrase the question. You have a sandbox. It analyzes how files behave, such as it identifies malware. It sees that certain new malware has appeared that can bypass various security measures. And this information is stored with you. You create behavioral indicators, and then people come, and then they knock on your door, and they say, please share this information with us. We want it. We want to use it for, I don't know, cyber armament against a potential enemy of ours. Well, a specific example. Because the data that you accumulate might be used for cyber armament. I don't think we have anything to, hide in here, because the first thing you do is analyzing the criminal actions. If we find out about the new ways of bypassing the security, or the new malware, our CERT is a part of international CERTs, and we have to exchange this information. So what we know will soon be known by others. Trying to hide it within ourselves, potentially dangerous and potential that can harm other companies, and not telling it to the world, living with this and sitting on this know-how is wrong. I mean, morally and ethically wrong, but secondly, today it doesn't work because information is exchanged pretty soon. If you are asked not to disclose the information to other CERTs, that's what we discussed in the previous section. Probably I'll say no. I'll say no. Okay, clear. Andrei. It's a difficult question to answer. One can fantasize and imagine being at such a level that deals with such kind of issues. It's not so easy for me to answer because I have very difficult, complicated relations to special services. To ours, I'm fully open. To foreign, I'm fully closed. And again, if ours come along and knock on the door, I don't really want to end up in a situation like this. Like with Telegram. When secret services want to get everything, but it's the public who suffers. Depends on the real case. If The National Security Service and the Secret Service potentially might become better if they use our services or our data, and the public will not suffer, then I can think, well, the Russian public will not feel any worse. Well, then the question becomes even more complicated. Well, I'm talking about some very real cases. I'm pretty sure these cases will arrive very soon. Okay, all depends on... Yeah, it's my subjective view. And there is no single answer or no single solution to it. We have to judge it case by case, because we live in this country and we want this country to be just a little bit better than other countries. But I don't really want, other countries to suffer at the same time. So it's a very uneasy question. Thank you, Andrea. Dmitry. This question sounds very abstract for me. Because like it was said, the data we produce very soon becomes publicly available. It's published in just a year or two and becomes available for everyone. That's why it's so hard for me to imagine, personally, how that can apply to me. I see that where this question is coming from, the one that we've discussed in our letter exchange, but it became a little bit more personal. I think it's like with the Miranda Code in policing. Whatever you say can be used against you, right? In my field and in any science, whatever you do can be used for any purposes, and you always understand that. It can be used for benefit, and it can be used for good, and it can be used for bad things. That's just the way of our life. That's just the way the life is built. So everyone has to decide for himself how they deal with the secret services. It depends again on the case. You know, we can be invited with lectures and with presentations to various secret agencies, special agencies in different countries, and I don't see anything criminal in it. But it might be wrong for me, for my ethics. But I will still do it. If there's another case and the Secret Service comes to us and says, do you want us to live better than they? We want to live better if we become better ourselves, not if they become worse than us or they suffer. Okay, clear. Yeah, all major questions were asked. Now we have the questions from the audience. HSC, please, first. Thank you. Actually, this ethical question confused me completely. Because by acting this way, well, the organization that is there to defend cyber threats and the experts in it have to do something completely different. Why should we multiply harmful substances or harmful entities? Why do you say that we're doing something opposite? Because any defense means that you have to understand the ways others attack. You know, internet is global. There's no Russian internet. There's no, well, you see there are different opinions about it, whether the internet is global or not. We all understand it. That blockanization of the internet is currently on. When enclaves are being established, we can argue whether it's good or bad, but nevertheless it moves this way. We have it in the internet, we have it in the personal data protection. Everybody wants to be independent. Everybody wants to exchange information only with people they trust, the people that are close to them, across various areas and avenues. And when we say that the internet is global and there are no borders, that's the situation of the past. Now, of course, it's changing. But of course, we want it as 20 years ago, but we have to be realistic. One can try to move against the flow, but FSB, Roskomnadzor, Federal Security Agency, all of these guys are telling us that we're moving towards this closing and shutting off ourselves. It's your point of view, yes, of course. Unless you, well, if you agreed with me, you wouldn't be sitting in here. Splinternet, you know? Splinternet, split internets. There's even a term coined for it. Okay, the terminology might change, but for the majority of the users, they would still consider it to be a full-fledged internet. Viktor Savitsky, 2 questions to the speakers. First, you do your AI research in security and such. Engineer psychologists and engineers, not just psychologists or HR guys, but actually real hardcore psychologists that work with interface, that work with like additional solutions, psychological. Do they take part in your research? Do you have engineers, psychologists at the level to which they're involved? That's the first question. And in the beginning, Alexei Lukatsky shown how artificial intelligence works in Cisco against social engineering. So people get access to offices, and the artificial intelligence calculates or tries to identify who's just a bypasser and shouldn't be there. We had some funny frames, funny movies in there, but do you have any developments in this area? Well, first question, Anton, you will answer about psychology engineers. I'll repeat again. Today, we're not talking about fully independent, self-sufficient systems. Our systems are still searching, match the data, and then, only then, they provide the data to the people, and the people have to make the decision. Psychologists come into play only when a full autonomy is ensured. So no, to your question. Andrei? I'm unaware of such roles, and I'm still too far away from developing all those systems. As far as security is concerned and machine learning, I know that 2 major positions or 2 major roles take part. Security experts for various aspects and the so-called data scientists. Without these 2 roles, nothing can work out. I mean, AI in cybersecurity. Do we have psychologists in there? I cannot comment on that. On our level, the answer is much simpler. It is definitely yes. Under our Academy of Science, we have a scientific council called Methodology of Artificial Intelligence, and we have lots of seminars, and all those seminars are interdisciplinary. So philosophers, mathematicians, psychologists, of course, have to take part in those seminars. I know personally a group of people working at the psychological department of MSU that deal with interfaces, psychological problems that we are talking about today now. Thank you. We have a department. When a new service or product is published, they have to assess its ergonomics, if we're talking about software or hardware, and psychological perceptibility. So we select either people from outside or within our own organization. Then we test the product on them. So how adequately these people can cope with our interfaces, and then the psychologists will issue recommendations on changing the UX or instructions or commands that this security product is generating. As far as the second question is concerned, yeah, we do have CCTV, but we're not, yeah, it was our own product, so we cannot really alienate this product from us. As I said, lots of vendors in AI are still in the first step. So the solutions are there, but for own proprietary use, and they're not yet replicated for customers. So yes, we do have this solution, but we don't sell it. And as far as I know, we're not even planning to. Can I add? If we talk about the interface, yes, of course, we have UX, UI designers, we have testers, and so on and so forth. Microsoft, of course, has these guys as well. I think when he asked about psychologists, no, he said engineers, not just the usual psychologists, not just the usual HRs. Okay, thanks a lot for the answer. I just wanted to add. Again, it's a rhetorical question. It might at least seem as a rhetorical one. Do you think the engineers, psychologists were used when Facebook was developed? That's a very good question. I'm not sure we will be able to answer it, because Facebook consists of many additional modules, external models sometimes, that use Facebook interfaces to launch something on their own. So you have to specify a specific, well, you have to show a specific element or point at a specific element or part of Facebook. If you are driving at Cambridge Analytics, I don't think they were psychologists and engineers. I'm pretty sure they had a very big department there doing this. If you look at Kaczynski stories and the rest of it, they had a very serious, very big back office that was developing the model, doing the analytics, and so on and so forth. And of course, there were psychologists and everybody else. Thank you for the answer. I watched the Social Network movie, actually, and I'm pretty sure you've seen it as yourself. You know that this subjective scaling or scoring is at the foundation of Facebook. So it's a social research on how people select or choose. And this subjective scoring in Facebook is still the main tool, vehicle. So when we research AI in Russia, we also need to include not just psychologists, but engineering psychologists. Because engineering psychologists in Russia, unfortunately, we have only a few of them. And they're only employed at some top-notch things where nobody will ever find them, such as nuclear power plants and so on and so forth. But I think their expertise have to be used so that our applied AI development continued in good faith. Colleagues, at that we would like to wrap it all up. I'd like to say thanks to all the speakers and panelists for their interesting answers, and thanks a lot to you for listening to us and asking questions. I hope it was interesting. I'm sure that some issues, some questions were answered. Others, I hope, caused more food for thought for you. And we're yet to tackle those additional questions in the nearest future. Thank you very much.